Hey everyone, Matt Wakeling here. You are listening to the Guitar Speak podcast. Thanks for tuning in. Today we are back to Iconic Albums number 3. Now this is a show where I speak to my friends Rob, Rhodes and Gabor, Josika, and we talk about guitar records that influenced and impacted our lives in a guitar sense. Today we are talking Red Hot Chilli Peppers. That's coming up real soon. This episode is brought to you by The Pedal Movie, a feature-length film all about effects pedals created by the music gear marketplace Reverb. I am super excited about this film. The Pedal Movie features nearly 100 interviews with people like Steve Vai, Peter Frampton, Jay Mascis, Billy Corgan, and more, including some of our Guitar Speak podcast alumni like Dweezil Zappa, Sarah Lipstate, Johnny Barmer, and Brian Wampler. Reverb's The Pedal Movie is available now on iTunes, Google Play, and Vudu. For more information, visit www.thepedalmovie.com. Today's episode is also brought to you by Fretboard Biology, the comprehensive online guitar course put together by Joe Elliott. Now, Joe is not only a fantastic guitar player, he draws on his years of experience as the ex-head of guitar at the Guitar Institute of Technology and also at the McNally Smith Music College. Here's a few words from Joe about the course.
If you're tired of wading through hundreds of random guitar videos and just want to become a better player, Fretboard Biology is your answer. Fretboard Biology is a self-paced, college-level program that'll give you the right instruction, in the right amounts, and in the right order. You'll learn the same information I taught to thousands of other guitar players over 30 years of teaching in top music colleges. If you want to make real progress with your guitar playing, then sign up for a free 7-day trial at fretboardbiology.com.
All right, welcome back everyone to Iconic Albums number 3. Week 1 we had Satriani. Week 2 talked some Clapton, and now we're up to some Red Hot Chili Peppers. I'm joined by Rob Rhodes.
Yeah, we haven't been cancelled yet.
Any moment now.
And that's Gabor, Josika.
Hi, Matt. Hey, Rob. Hello, everyone.
Great to see you guys. Awesome. We're going to continue on. Today it is Blood, Sugar, Sex, Magic by the Red Hot Chili Peppers. Gabor, you brought this record to our attention.
Yes.
Do you want to kick us off?
Sure. So, Blood, Sugar, Sex, Magic, a little backstory, right, with Blood, Sugar, Sex, Magic. So, Blood, Sugar, Sex, Magic came out on September 24th, 1991. And on September 23rd, 1991, I turned 13. So, it was the album of my teens.
Perfect timing.
And actually, Nevermind came out on the 24th of September 1991 as well. So, they both came out on the same day.
Wow.
And they're probably the two albums that, for me personally, made me want to play guitar and probably shaped me more than any other album. So that's sort of the albums. So that's the backstory. So that's sort of one of the reasons why I picked it, because I thought it really is it's an album that kind of made me want to play guitar, really.
Wow, awesome.
Yeah. So it was released in September, like I said, September 24th, 1991. It was, at the time, one of the biggest, most expensive record deals ever. And that was because they used to be signed to EMI. Their contract ran out. They decided not to renew with EMI. And they actually signed with Sony. But then they met some of the guys from Warner Brothers, and they liked them as people so much that they wanted to go and sign with Warner Brothers. So Warner Brothers actually bought them out of the Sony contract before they ever did anything with Sony.
Oh, wow.
Which ended up being quite an expensive thing to do. But it was at the time one of the most expensive albums or record deals because of that.
Cool.
And one of the stipulations was to give them total artistic freedom, which they did. In those days, Warner Brothers, with a few bands, like some other albums that I might want to talk about in the future, like Mr. Bungle, for example, who was on Warner Brothers, gave them complete artistic freedom, let them do whatever they wanted. And they wanted a producer who was very open-minded. So through a friend, they met Rick Rubin, who, I mean, if you into music, you probably would have heard of Rick Rubin before.
Yeah,
He's sort of one of the biggest producers. He started a label called Def Jam back in the days, and Beastie Boys, and I think one of the things they liked about him, he was very, he was sort of all over the place. He did hip hop, but then he also did Slayer. He recorded Slayer albums.
True.
He recorded, anything. Tom Petty, Johnny Cash. He was one of the guys behind the Run DMC Aerosmith collaboration, and Walk This Way. So he did quite a lot. He was quite open-minded. They wanted to work with him. They didn't want to work in a studio, so he suggested, let's go into a big mansion in Hollywood and live there and record there. Which, by the way, after they recorded that album, Rick Rubin ended up buying that mansion.
Okay.
And turned it into a studio called The Mansion. And hang on, I wrote it down. Like, there's heaps of stuff that was recorded there. So he had Mars Volta, Audioslave, Slipknot, Jay-Z, System of a Down, Maroon 5, Linkin Park. They all recorded at that house and lived at that house, which was his studio in the end.
Purchased from probably the points from the Blood, Sugar, Sex, Magic money.
Yeah, well, yeah, exactly. There would have been a bit of money, I'd say, for them.
That's awesome.
Yeah, so that's sort of the story how it kind of started anyway. And I don't know. Should I go on?
What about the house being haunted, mate?
Okay, so there's the story that the house is being haunted. And actually, another thing about the house, it was owned at one stage by Errol Flynn. Wow. Who was an Australian sort of, in the 30s, like Australian-born Hollywood star. He lived there for a while, and he owned it for a while. And it was apparently haunted. And the story goes that Chad Smith, the drummer, never stayed there and slept there because he was worried about the ghosts. But John Frusciante, the guitarist, said he hangs out with the ghosts all the time. They're really friendly and they're really nice.
Frusciante, man. He's a trippy dude.
Have you guys ever watched Funky Monks?
I started watching it last night, but I didn't get through it. But yeah.
Just, man, what a space cadet that guy was. Anyway. Some of the stuff. If you're underage, don't watch it. But,
okay.
Man, some of the stuff he says. Crazy. These creatives, they're weird people sometimes.
Yeah. He's on fire on this record.
It's such a killer album. It really is, to me. It's the album that sort of led me towards, funk and R&B, that sort of kind of style of music. And his playing is, and Flea as well. Their playing is just insanely good.
Yeah. I mean, they're really on the rise here too, because they've just they're off the back of Mother's Milk, which has got, they're climbing their ladder through that record. So we're about to hit maximum Chili Peppers.
Yeah. So, I mean, that album, Blood, Sugar, Sex, Magic, ended up selling about 14.5 or so million albums, roughly.
Wow.
It's not the biggest album. It's the second biggest album. California was their biggest album, the next album.
Okay.
But I think that sold over 20 million, that one. But I think one of the things they didn't like about Mother's Milk and the way Mother's Milk was recorded and the whole tour and everything, they weren't sort of allowed to do what they wanted to do. They always had the label and producers sort of tell them. They apparently were really unhappy about the way Mother's Milk turned out because they were trying to get them to be heavier, less funky, but more distorted guitars, which is kind of the thing at the time.
Yeah. And
they didn't really want to do that, so they wanted to. And so one of the ideas with that album was to completely strip it down, and try to keep it as simple as possible, to the point where actually a lot of the guitar tracks you hear on the album are him just going straight into the console.
Wow.
Because a lot of it is just clean guitar.
Yeah.
And a lot of it is him just going straight into the console. He did use a bunch of Marshall amps too. And that's also the album where he got into using 2 amps. So since that album, John Frusciante always live used usually 2 Marshall amps. And he said one is for the punch and one is for the top end, right? So one's the bottom end, one's the top end.
Right.
So on that album, some of the tracks he used actually a Marshall bass amp for the bottom end. And then different other guitar amps, like a JCM 800 and a Marshall Major, and I think a Plexi, like a JTM 45 type of thing as well. but mixed them sort of together.
Okay.
And I think Rick Rubin turned him onto that as well.
He also used a little solid state combo for overdubs. Apparently, a Fender Hot.
Fender Hot, yeah.
H-O-T.
And there's
with the full stops in between.
Yeah.
And I read yesterday in a guitar player, or one of those articles from that year, and he said when they hooked it up and they had the big Marshall stack hooked up, he liked the sound of the little Fender better, so he ended up using it for a lot of the overdubs.
Yeah.
Well, yeah,
Why
so
not?
apparently a big chunk of what you hear on the album is that little amp, or just going directly into the clean stuff, into the console. And then for guitars, he used, I think that's when he got into vintage Strats mostly.
Okay.
And he used, and there's, because I know the notes you sent, it's a 58 Strat.
Yeah, there's a couple of contrary stories
because
as far as that goes.
it was a rosewood fretboard, and Fender didn't introduce that at 59, so it was either a later one or the neck was swapped out. He also had apparently a 57 Strat with he didn't like the frets on it, so he ripped the frets out and used it as a fretless guitar and recorded a couple of songs, a couple of bits on some of the songs fretless.
Wow.
Yeah. So and 57 Strat. I mean, back then it was maybe a different story, but nowadays, holy moly, ripping frets out of 57 Strat.
Yeah.
We just saw just saw the
zeros.
Yeah, just saw the Norms guitar video with that with the 55 that had been where it was routed.
Yeah,
for the pickups to be backwards. We had a little discussion. Was it because a left-hander played it? Was he a Hendrix nut, right-handed a Hendrix nut, or when the guy or girl who refinished it put it back together, put the pickups in backwards, couldn't get it to fit, and then just routed it out so they could get the pick guard back on? I'd like to think it was the last one. Some guys, they're going, why won't this pick guard go back on? Oh, there's too much wood here. Let's just cut that out and put it back on.
And it was a really dodgy job, you could see too. It wasn't done very well.
Bad.
Yeah, it was that sort of honeyburst kind of looking, wasn't it?
Yeah, because it'd been
like a honeyburst.
refinished. Yeah. So that's classic.
Wow. Yeah. So yeah, back in those days, things were a little bit different to now, but
Absolutely.
Wow, man. So it's like
30... anyway, so he used most. Sorry, yeah, go.
I was going to say 30 years old. This record, it's aged pretty well.
It has, yeah. I think it sort of stood the test of time because I think they didn't really kind of. You couldn't pigeonhole it for that era. It didn't fit into that era. It made its own sort of space for that era.
Yeah.
And yeah, no, it's to me, it's just one of those albums that just. There's very few albums from that era that I still listen to from when I was that age. Even Nevermind is an album I don't really listen. I prefer In Utero actually, much like if you were talking Nirvana.
Okay.
But that was I think that was actually so backstory again. I turned 13 in September 91. I think Christmas 1991. My parents bought me my first CD player.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that was the first CD I bought was Blood Sugar Sex Magic. So I think that was the very first CD I've ever bought, and I still have it, the same one, and I still listen to it.
Nice. Radio, they were everywhere.
Still hard to miss it if you listen to Triple M.
Yeah.
True, yeah. And it was also that film clip, the Under the Bridge film clip.
Yeah.
It sort of started my love for offset guitars because I love the look of that Jaguar. So the Jaguar on there it looks blue, but it's actually Sherwood green. It's a Sherwood green 62, I think.
66?
Well,
here we go again.
Disputes about that as well. So some people say 62, some people say 66 because they didn't do Sherwood green until later. But yes, the 62, 66 Sherwood green Jaguar. Which, and this is kind of funny as well, it now lives at a Hard Rock cafe somewhere. And they asked John Frusciante how it ended up there, and he has no idea. Because after the whole, so 92, they were touring the album, and they were in Tokyo, and he lost it. He kind of went a bit crazy, and he pretty much didn't want to go on stage, but the band kind of talked him into going on stage. And apparently he sort of just stood in the corner in the sort of shadows, almost off stage, played the show, and then disappeared. And went into this massive drug and craze, and probably meant like some mental issues as well. And most of the gear that he got during that time, all these vintage Strats and everything, he kind of hocked for drugs and stuff, and didn't know where they went and how they got where they went. And so apparently he has no idea how that ended up in the Hard Rock Cafe, but it's there. And he somehow, he apparently gave it to Hard Rock Cafe, but he has no idea when that happened or how that happened. So that's all, it's a blur.
Full on, man. That guitar looks awesome in that clip. And
it looks so good, yeah.
Yeah. I don't know if many people were playing Jags then. I mean, Sonic Youth, those guys were playing the offsets, Dinosaur Jr.,
well, Dinosaur Jr. was Jazz Masters, but Kurt Cobain as well. Nirvana, he just put humbuckers in it, but he had his famous Jaguar, and so that sort of started my love for offsets, and I always wanted one since then. Even though I didn't play guitar for another few years, but I always wanted one of those.
Yeah, amazing. Hey, funny you mentioned the Japan Meltdown. I had tickets to see them. I think it must have been around '93. It was that tour. And obviously the dates were moved, and then they came a year or so later, or maybe less than a year, and they had Rick Marshall on guitar. I didn't, pre-internet, I didn't even know who was going to play guitar. I knew it wasn't John Frusciante, which I was a bit bummed out about. But Marshall was great. Not the same deal, but he did a great job. And it was a killer show. Early '90s Chili Peppers live was full on, man.
When they were still young enough to, I mean, I saw them later on I think it was for the California or Californication, album, and they were still going at it pretty hard. But I guess as you get older, it's probably getting harder and harder for them too. But yeah, crazy. They really got into the shows.
Yeah, man. Flea was still in his underpants phase. And well, I saw them again in 2000 and he had pants by then. But Flea's in his undies. They had two guitar roadies / backup vocalists just on the side of the stage shirtless, just going bonkers. You think, who are these guys? And then they'd step up to these mics on the side and sing the backing vocals for whatever it was, and then they'd grab a guitar and change some strings and swap guitars out, and they were just general hands. They were amazing. So, and the encore, they all came out with the flamethrower helmets, shooting the flames out, doing whatever they were doing. It was great. It was killer. But then when I saw them in 2000, I think it was, big day out, Frusciante's back in the band. He's looking healthy and happy in the band, and they just killed it, man. It was so good.
I mean, he's such a vital part to that band. I mean, he writes most of the songs, but yeah, he's an absolutely massively vital part.
Let's take a break, and we'll come back and talk about tracks and specific stuff. Awesome.
I hope you are enjoying today's interview. Now, this podcast is brought to you by The Pedal Movie, a feature-length film all about effects pedals created by the music gear marketplace Reverb. Now, you know we love guitar pedals here on the Guitar Speak podcast, and we're super excited on the release of this film. The Pedal Movie explores how effects pedals and their builders have shaped modern music and guitar playing over time, from the fuzz pedal experiments of the Rolling Stones and Jimi Hendrix through the shoegaze and indie rock of the 90s and up to the modern day use of effects. Reverb also speaks with builders and leaders from more than 50 pedal brands to answer the big question, how did guitar pedals get so big? Reverb's The Pedal Movie is available now on iTunes, Google Play and Voodoo. For more info, check out thepedalmovie.com. Today's episode is also brought to you by Fretboard Biology, the comprehensive online guitar course put together by master guitar teacher Joe Elliott. Now, I was a beta tester for the course, and as a music educator myself, I was very impressed by the logical layout and format of the course. Heavyweight guitarists such as Brett Garsed and Greg Koch have also endorsed the program, so check it out at www.fretboardbiology.com. Okay, back to our interview.
All right, welcome back. Gabor, you want to lead us through some tracks or favourite song stuff?
Yeah, okay. So for me, again, it's sort of kind of the one song that's really quite different on the album, but Breaking the Girl was always one of my favourite tracks on that album. The film clip too, very psychedelic.
Yeah.
And that's got Eric Marshall actually in it as well, that he's in the film clip to that too. I think that's the only film clip he's in.
Oh, really? Wow.
Yeah. Because I think they did, Suck My Kiss was taken from the Funky Monks compilation, like, cutouts from
the house,
the house when in that mansion, and the other film clips, Frusciante was still in the band, so I think that was the only clip from that album that didn't have him in it, and Rick Marshall was in it. But I love that song. That 12-string guitar. I always tried to work out how to play it, never could, and then I realized it's an E flat. All you got to do is tune the guitar to E flat, and then it works.
I think we've
What about you guys?
For me, I'm going to take your seat, Gabor, as far as this record goes, and I'll put my hand up and say that last night was the first time I'd ever listened to this record through from start to finish.
Oh, cool.
Obviously, I've been on job sites my whole life working. My old man's a brickie, so I worked for a lot of years as a brickie's labourer, and the Triple M playlist was Suck My Kiss, Breaking the Girl, Under the Bridge, Give It Away.
Yeah.
So heard them all the time and played in cover bands and have done those songs before. And a good friend of mine used to be in a Chili Pepper show, as I know you used to be as well, Gabor.
Briefly, yes, I was, yes.
So for me at that time, 92, I was rebelling against the new stuff, the coming out of Seattle and the heavier stuff. So I was more a Living Colour fan actually at this time. So
me too.
And if you're not a young person full of vim and vigor, let's say, you would have made the connection of how close this record and Living Colour, like it's that rock, funk, metal thing. So for me, long story short, Blood Sugar Sex Magic stands out for me because it's just that. It's a heavy riffing guitar. It's pocket. It's groove.
Yeah.
It's all that sort of stuff that I really, really, really dig. But yeah, I had a similar situation with Breaking the Girl, trying to learn that from. It was a tab in Guitar Magazine.
Which was so wrong.
I know. It was like, this doesn't seem right. Who this isn't right. Because didn't they have an alternate tuning or something as well? It wasn't just E flat. It was like, you got to tune your guitar like.
And with a capo.
Dadgad or
as well,
something
on like
weird.
the fourth fret or something like that. It was really weird. But yeah, all you got to do is tune to E flat and it's all like A chords basically.
Yeah, and apparently they only played it live once, the first show of the tour, and it was a complete train wreck and they never performed it live again.
Okay.
Wow. They said it just fell to pieces and they never played it again.
I can imagine it'd be a difficult song to pull off live.
But the outtakes. So the outtakes from the album, when you get the deluxe, where they covered a couple of Hendrix songs, which are two of my favorite Hendrix songs, Little Miss Lover and Castles Made of Sand. And both of those they do a great cover, like Higher Ground.
That was killer, that was killer. Yeah.
So good. And that was a staple in everyone's cover set for a while there. And then Soul to Squeeze is actually an outtake from that as well.
Great song,
Did not
yeah.
know that. That's
That was
probably
another-
my favourite.
Sorry, what was that, Matt?
Oh, that's probably my favourite Chili song. I didn't know it was an outtake from this record.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was like a B-side, and then they released it for that Coneheads movie.
Yeah, wow.
And it actually became one of their best charting songs.
Yeah.
I think. Yeah.
And then I think I love One Hot Minute. Like I love Dave Navarro, and I thought that album got me into the Chili Peppers. So very different because I wasn't a Navarro fan before that. I wasn't a Jane's Addiction fan. It was just that I'm one of those weird guys that likes Metallica's Load and Reloader. Reloaded.
I do too.
I like all the albums that the fans hate, and the fans hate One Hot Minute. I love it. I don't know.
It's funny they even recently they started playing a few songs, but they refused to even play any songs off One Hot Minute live.
Yeah.
They didn't even want to do it.
Well, I've heard
Sorry?
Frusciante has refused to listen to that album ever.
Yeah.
So he's not going to learn the songs.
I do think it's a really good album. I do think it's very underrated. But I do still think Blood Sugar Sex Magic, that's for me, that was their peak.
Yeah. Awesome. Man, for me, I mean, there's heaps of stuff I love on the record. Give It Away, I mean, yeah, it is smashed out day in, day out on commercial radio still, but it's just a killer song, man. The little chromatic guitar lines in the verse that Frusciante chucks in, that bow, 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 all that kind of just wacky stuff.
And the two backwards guitar solos.
Oh,
just great.
Yeah, that is great.
It's already quirky, and then he goes backwards. Yeah, it's just just rules. Just over that thunderous backbeat and Flea riffing out. It's super cool. I really like Funky Monks because there's some in the chorus. There's some nice chord movements. Like a lot of stuff on this record, except for the more ballady things, but all the up stuff, it's often just a 1 or 2 chord vamp.
Yeah.
Which they rule, which they dominate that stuff. But I loved hearing kind of those cool chord changes in the Funky Monks chorus. That was fun. And there's a blazing wah solo on that tune. For all the indie loose guitar stuff, like when he wants to put his foot down, he makes it work. So that's kind of cool.
Yeah.
What else? Spanish Castle, that cover. Yeah. Spanish Castle's made of sand, because it's not just Frusciante doing the Hendrix, those hammer-on chord things. It's Flea doubling a lot of that as well, which is super cool.
Great, so great. And that wah that people might be surprised to know that it's Ibanez WH10.
Yeah.
So no Crybaby, no, none of the usual Vox things or whatever. Ibanez.
Yeah, right.
And he still uses it. That's the only wah. And there is a rig rundown, like Premier Guitar rig rundown. I think it was with Josh Klinghoffer, but so when Frusciante wasn't in the band.
Yeah.
But it's such an integral sound, he has to use that same wah as well.
I bet.
And apparently it breaks like every second gig because they're really flimsy plastic ones.
It's plastic, yeah.
But because Frusciante has gotten sort of quite a cult following as a guitar player.
Yeah.
Those have gotten ridiculously expensive.
Really?
The original ones. Because the reissues apparently sound completely different.
Right, so you need the 90s one.
It has a really particular sweep that you don't get out of any other wah pedal.
Yeah.
But they break. Apparently you step on it a little bit too much and it's broken.
How crazy is Frusciante's pedal board in Californication era?
Yeah, and later on it got massive.
Yeah.
I mean, in Blood Sugar Sex Magic, he literally all he had was a chorus, and he mainly used that to split the signal into the 2 amps.
Okay.
And a DS2 distortion and a wah, and that wah. That's pretty much all he had in those days. And then, and especially in Stadium Arcadium days, it turned into this massive, like, I don't know, 10-meter long thing.
Yeah.
Insane.
It's great. Everyone needs a pedal board like that.
Yeah, totally. Totally, man. I think a patch lead's not working. Which one? I don't know. Don't worry about it.
The guitar tech will deal with it.
Exactly.
Well, again, actually, that's in that same rig rundown. The guitar tech, who used to be John Frusciante's guitar tech as well, he built a special thing where it's sort of every pedal is plugged into it's almost like a switcher, but not a switcher.
Okay.
But if you instantly know when a patch lead or a pedal is down, and you can, with a flick of a switch, you take that pedal out of the loop.
Right. Okay.
That's cool.
Yeah,
because there's so many pedals, because
something.
of the ridiculous amount of stuff that they were using.
Yeah.
I know. I mean, this is going to a different album, but in the Stadium Arcadium days, Frusciante was actually using modular synthesizers.
Okay.
Running his guitar through modular synthesizers for some of the stuff, and
wow.
Then he got a lot of those Moog Mogafoga pedals.
Yeah, I remember that.
Mogafoga pedals to try and recreate that sound live.
Full on, man. Full on.
Yeah.
And he's back in the band now. Is that true?
Yeah. So they kicked Josh Klinghoffer out just before COVID.
Right.
Because he wanted to be. He left because he sort of didn't want to do the touring thing anymore.
Yeah.
And then he decided he wanted to be back in a band, and they just went, yep, and kicked Josh Klinghoffer out.
Right.
Which wasn't the nicest thing to do.
Well, I heard an interview with Josh, and he said he kind of knew it was going on.
Yeah.
And there was always kind of an agreement. It ended up being 10 years that he was in the band.
Yeah.
Almost to the day, he said. I forget what, he was either on, he might have been on Bill Burr's podcast or Mark Maron or something like that. And he was like really cool about it. He was just like, you know, that's the business. And I always knew I was just filling in and he would come back.
And I mean, he was the main songwriter for the band, really. I mean, he wrote pretty much everything from Blood Sugar Sex Magic, well, minus One Hot Minute, but, you know, everything up until Stadium Arcadium. He was the main sort of brains behind the band, really. And, you know, you could see that they were successful whenever he was in a band and less successful whenever he was not in a band. So I guess it's a smart move on their behalf to kind of go, you know what, let's get him back in a band. And because he has such a massive cult following. So I think a lot of people will listen to Chili Pepper stuff again because he's in the band again.
Yeah.
Yep, that old Renaissance thing.
Yeah.
You know.
Yeah.
That's it.
Yeah.
I got a couple of cool little stories that come out of this era of the Chili Peppers.
Okay.
So touring, when they went on tour, I think Kiedis heard Smashing Pumpkins on MTV or something, said, right, we want them as our support. So they went out and secured the Smashing Pumpkins. And then at that time, Jack Irons, who was playing in Pearl Jam, who had played in the Chili Peppers earlier, rang up Kiedis and said, oh, can my new band Pearl Jam come and do the support? So then they did the support as well for the first leg of the tour. And then there was a falling out somewhere amongst the Smashing Pumpkins and might have been a girlfriend or something or other. And the Chili Peppers picked up the phone to Dave Grohl and said, would Nirvana like to come and jump on the tour? And it ended up the Chili Peppers, Pearl Jam, and Nirvana on the Blood Sugar Sex Magic tour. Like crazy.
I think it was actually
killer.
Because Billy Corgan used to date Courtney Love.
That's right, yeah.
That's what it was, yeah.
And they wanted off because Nirvana were coming on board or
We're
something.
coming on because they were like the big thing, yeah.
But imagine that for a tour. Like
that's a tour to go and watch, yeah.
That's insanely good.
I mean, that's the 90s in a nutshell in one show.
Yeah,
absolutely.
That's all you need. That's all you need. Couple of boy bands on the way home, play the CD, you've done the whole thing.
Bit of Backstreet Boys, yeah.
Awesome. Hey, Gabor, killer record. Thanks for bringing it along. And,
cool.
Man, any final words on the RHCP BSSM record?
There's a lot of letters there. It's almost as long as someone's
podcast
YouTube channel. But no, just have a listen to it. There's a lot of as a guitar player, I think it's a lot of the stuff. If you just listen to it at first glance, it's sort of understated. But if you really listen to some of the stuff he plays, it's really different out there guitar playing. But it just works so well with the song. So I think it's if you people out there haven't listened to it, check some of the stuff out and try to find the bits where he uses a fretless guitar. Because once you know it and you know which song it is in, I think he uses it in Mellowship, Slinky B in B minor,
B major, B major, yeah.
B major, B minor.
That's for the kids to work it out at home.
Once you listen to it, you kind of go, that's a fretless guitar. Okay, of course it is. Yeah. So you hear these bits once you kind of know. So just check out the album. I think it's a killer album.
That's awesome. Hey, that just still on that track then, I actually wrote down Mellowship, Slinky B Major, popped clean guitars. Like he's popping it. Like a bass player. So that's the fretless.
I think there could be the fretless, parts in that. Well, anyway, there's parts in that. I think there's a little bit. Yeah, he pops it and slides on it. Yeah, you can hear it. I think that's the bit you're talking about. Yeah,
yeah,
that's a fretless bit. And then he played. Is it on that song? He played apparently for the intro. Was it for the intro of that? No, Righteous and the Wicked. The intro. He used a Coke bottle to play the slide bit.
Sure,
there's interesting things. You know, there's just check it out.
Yeah,
awesome.
Just a little sidebar here. This is episode 3, and I think one thing that this album does that the other two that we've spoken about so far, Surfing with the Alien and Layla and Assorted Love Songs, is that this album stands up. Like, it still sounds really fresh.
Yeah, yeah.
The production, like, everything sounds good, and none of this needs to be reinvented. Whereas we talked about, you know, on Surfing with the Alien, that we like the live versions. Matt and I like the live versions of the songs. So that had to be sort of reinvented because it sounds dated. And then Clapton reinvented Layla because that kind of sounds a little bit dated, that album too. Like, it sounds very 70s.
It is,
but this album could come out today and stand up like with any record that's being released at the moment. So
very true,
Yeah, good
it's
call.
just an observation of the first three albums we've looked at.
Yeah, awesome. Well, guys, it's been so fun as usual. I can't wait to do some more records. But my big thanks to Rob Rhodes of That 70s Show and plenty of other gigs. And Gabor, Josika from the, I've written it down, Super Fun, Awesome, Happy Time Pedal Show.
Woohoo!
Yeah, thanks.
Thanks, fellas.
Thanks, Matt. Thanks,
Thank
Rob.
you. Cheers. Thanks, Gabor.
All right, there you go. Red Hot Chili Peppers talk with Rob and Gabor. Hey, my apologies to Rob. He doesn't play in That 70s Show. He plays in Livin' in the 70s. Links in the show notes. Sorry about that. Hey, thanks so much for joining me. We've got more iconic albums episodes coming up, talking about albums by Stevie Ray Vaughan, Deep Purple, and Primus. Good times. And of course, there's a whole bunch of interviews being posted all the time on the Guitar Speak podcast. The most recent was with Brian Canham of Pseudo Echo, and that was a super fun conversation. So if you haven't heard that yet, check it out. You're going to love it. All right, time for me to go. Thanks again for tuning in. My name's Matt Wakeling. You've been listening to the Guitar Speak podcast. And in the words of Michael Schenker, keep on rockin'. Okay, catch you next time. Bye now.